My buddy and colleague from SiriusXM's Progress channel, Dean Obeidallah. And Dean, welcome back to the program. You, as a Muslim American, have a unique perspective on the meaning and consequences of the use of the word terrorism. You wrote a brilliant op-ed about this for MSNBC yesterday or the day before. Tell us about it.
Sure, Tom. Thanks for having me on. It's always great to chat with you, and thanks for being on my show earlier this week. I wrote an article for MSNBC based on FBI Director Christopher Wray's testimony this week on Tuesday and also in March. He said the FBI views January 6th as an act of, quote, domestic terrorism, close quotes. And that's not his gut opinion. He's not a talk show host or a pundit, public policy, or change government. So it's essentially violence that has a political goal. That's how the FBI use it. They don't use the word insurrection. We can use it if we want, but to me, insurrection is more this intellectual word. It might be correct, it might not be, but it's giving the GOP a chance to debate what's an insurrection, what's not.
It's a very 18th century word, too.
Right, it is. Terrorism has a visceral reaction. We know, I know it, as someone who's, as a Muslim American, where we were, why don't we denounce terrorism, and are we soft on terrorism? Are we supporting the terrorists? All this garbage. Well, this January 6th, it's not me as Dean the pundit or host saying it. The FBI director said it was an act of domestic terrorism. I think we should frame it that way. I think Democrats should. I think people in the media should. That this was an act of terrorism, and ask the Republicans the same question George Bush asked after 9/11. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. And let them downplay a terrorist attack. Frame it that way. Let them say, oh, they weren't all bad terrorists. You're still within our frame, which is the accurate frame. It's not hyperbolic. It is based on the FBI director. So my point is, January 6th was an act of domestic terrorism under federal law. It's undeniable. We should be using that. If you want to add insurrection as well, I get it. That's fine. But terrorism moves people, and let the GOP defend the terrorists like Ashley Babbitt and the others. Everyone involved in an act of terrorism is a terrorist. This is 2 + 2 = 4 stuff. This is what's going on. We have the GOP literally defending an act of terrorism against the United States, which was, I say January 6th was far more dangerous to our democracy than 9/11. I mean, different in terms of people being killed, of course, and destruction, far worse than 9/11. But that was not going to overturn our democracy. January 6th, its goal was to destroy our democracy. That was the goal.
Yeah, it's a genuine act of terrorism, and you know, I recall during the protests over the murder of George Floyd, a Fox News pundit, and I'm straining to remember who it was. Louise and I occasionally pop over there, and it's in the evening, you know. So it was one of the primetime guys was using the word terrorist to describe Black Lives Matter protesters. There is no doubt in my mind. I wrote an op-ed, and you and I talked about this on your program earlier in the week, as I recall. I wrote an op-ed saying that we need to start using the word corrupt as a predicating adjective every single time we use the word Republican. You know, the corrupt Republican so-and-so, or the corrupt Kevin McCarthy, or the corrupt GOP, or the, you know. I mean, this is how Republicans would be playing it if the shoe was on the other foot. If the Democratic Party was as corrupt and in the bag with these giant corporations and whatnot as the Republican Party is, they would be calling them corrupt. And similarly, if it had been Democratic constituents who had attacked the Capitol on January 6th, you can bet your ass that they would be calling them terrorists. I mean, you bet your bottom dollar. I mean, there is no doubt about it. And so, I'll start doing that, Dean. You're going to obviously start doing that on your show on SiriusXM. But I think we've got to also, encourage our listeners to start leaning on the rest of the media to use the word that the friggin' FBI is using, terrorism, to describe what happened on January 6th instead of, riot or insurrection or anything else, a terrorist act.
Right. It wasn't a riot. A riot sounds more organic. Yeah. But, Tom, what we're both talking about is framing, and it's something Republicans have done really well for a long time. Yeah. And Democrats, if they do well, it was an accident. I can assure you. It was not by design. Like, they stumbled on it and it actually worked, and people repeated it and like, wow, that was great. We framing is so important. It doesn't win every argument, but it helps you. It gives you an advantage. And if you keep people debating within the frame we create, it helps us. So if you have them going, we're not that corrupt, well, that's not going to help them. But you've got them saying corrupt. And in this case, look, this is not me saying it was an act of domestic terrorism. It was the FBI director. He's testified more than once about it. If you look at the federal law, it's very clear it was an act of terrorism. Donald Trump incited an act of terrorism. That Donald Trump is, in my view, hence a terrorist. And we have Sean Hannity celebrating him 2 days ago on Fox News, and Republicans celebrating him. I guess too bad they can't find people in the Bin Laden family to have on.
Actually, they did.
Family to be on too.
Yesterday, 3 days ago in Geneva, Switzerland, on Lake Geneva, Osama bin Laden's niece, I think her name is Noor bin Laden, was riding around in a boat just off, right off the shore of this resort, this castle resort where they were holding the meeting, carrying this giant flag that said Trump won.
Well, I mean,
honest to God,
you can judge Trump by his fans, I think, a little bit there.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable to see even polling showing more Republicans have a positive view of Putin over Joe Biden. But that makes sense because Trumpism at its core is a hatred of democracy, rejection of democratic norms.
It's an embrace of authoritarianism.
Yeah, exactly, and cruelty. So they would like someone like Putin where his political enemies are dead or in jail. I think some of the GOP would be on board with that, and that's kind of frightening, but that's where we stand right now.
Yeah.
In January, as FBI director and Merrick Garland on Tuesday gave a speech saying there's an elevated risk of domestic terrorism, and the two places it comes from, militia groups and white supremacists. That's who attacked us on January 6th. They're still out there. They're part of the GOP.
Absolutely, and they've completely aligned themselves with the Republican Party, and the Republican Party has completely aligned itself with them. It's bizarre. Dean Obeidallah, the Dean of Radio, deanofradio.com, in fact. The great Dean Obeidallah. Thanks for dropping by, Dean. It's great talking with you.
Nice. Same as here. Thanks, Thom.
Yeah, have a good one. Have a great one.